All right, Nick, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. I think at this point, everybody knows the biggest concern or the biggest question for the Bears going forward is who's going to be the next coach of this team. And we're going to get straight to it. No funny business here. We have a tweet outlining some really good potential candidates that the Bears are looking for. We're going to break down those candidates right here. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Chicago Bears, there's some sources out there that have named there's specifically 4 head coaching candidates the Bears have at the top of their list, guys they are really interested in. Let's get into the article or tweet, and we'll talk more about it on the other side. So this is over on X. It's from at Danny Mac Show, Dan McNeil on X. It says sources confirm these 4 coaches are the Bears list for head coach. Ben Johnson, Brian Flores, Joe Brady, and Mike Vrabel. They may want to talk to more candidates, but they're targeting these 4 more as soon as I get it. Hashtag I bear witness. I think this is a very interesting name list of names for the Bears at head coach. Very different. A lot of different options they could go for, whether it's offensive, defensive, old, new. I think it's a really good list here. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But Bears fans, before we get to Nick, I want to know from you. A lot of choices out there, and it doesn't have to be somebody on this list. I want you to give us your thoughts. Who do you think is the ideal next Bears head coach? Let us know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this list of Bears head coaches?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting list. Obviously, it's early in the process, and even though there's some sources here, everything should be taken with a little bit of grain of salt. But these names have been names that have come apart from other sources and other rumors. So there's a decent amount of corroborating evidence where it feels like these 4 guys will have a legitimate shot to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. And it's very interesting because each of these 4 names has like a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. Take Johnson, for example, very smart, offensive minded guy. Best case scenario, he's a Kyle Shanahan, X's and O's, comes in, changes the Bears offense. Worst case scenario, he just doesn't get becoming a head coach. He struggles, is kind of like a nerd out there, can't figure it out. And he's like a Mark Trestman, right? You look at Flores, for example, best case scenario, he's Bill Belichick 2.0. Worst case scenario, he's Matt Patricia, right? There's again the upside, great defensive mind, downside, can't handle being a head coach, had some issues in Miami. You look at Brady, quarterback guru, has made Josh Allen so much of a better quarterback. Can he unlock Caleb Williams? That's the upside. The downside is he just another like Brian Dabble who's about to get fired with the Giants, right? There's with all of these names, there's going to be some pluses and some negatives. Even Vrabel, right? Vrabel's a culture guy, right? He's upside is Dan Campbell. The downside is he doesn't hire the right people. He didn't get the right offensive personnel in terms of coaching in Tennessee. That's probably why he ended up getting fired in the first place. So there's upsides and downsides to each of these names. But I think the fact that they're sprayed all over the map in terms of stylistically, to me, is an indicator that the Bears, they're not looking for one specific type of coach. They're trying to find the right guy. They're doing the first who and then how and what, which I think is the right approach, right? So many times in these coaching searches, I think teams can screw up. They sit there and say, we're looking for the next offensive guru or the next young defensive mind, or we want to bring in a savvy veteran coach, or we want to bring in a great play caller or a great talent evaluator, whatever, right? They're looking for an archetype instead of focusing on the specific person. And I think the Bears, based on this report and a lot of other reports we're seeing, are trying to find the ideal person. They're going to ask a bunch of different styles of coaching candidates how they feel about this situation. How are they going to handle this? And I think they're going to weight all of them appropriately and try and make the best decision, obviously. And I think it's not a bad approach because I know everyone wants to say you need to pair him with an offensive minded guy with Caleb Williams to figure out how things are going to go down the stretch. Get him his Sean McVay. That's not necessarily the answer, right? Obviously, people sit there and say, well, get Ben Johnson. But if you look at what Ben Johnson does great things because he has Dan Campbell running the show ahead of him in Detroit. How would he be as a head coach? We really don't know. Brady's the same thing with Buffalo, right? Vrabel's a great culture guy. Maybe that's what they need in Chicago. Just get a winning, smash mouth, tough culture imbued like Mike Ditka 2.0, right? There's a lot of different things to consider here. And I think the Bears are taking a really smart approach. I personally think, if you gun in my head, I think Vrabel is the guy because I think the problem in Chicago is culture more than anything else. They need to get winning attitude back. I think Vrabel's the right guy. That's my opinion. But I honestly like their approach, not focusing on a type, but trying to find the right who to become their next head man.
Yeah, Nick, and I would say on that list, Mike Vrabel to me is a candidate that's probably in the top two for me. Not number one, but probably top two guys I like. The one I would say definitely shy away from if I'm Chicago. I don't really love the aspect of a Brian Flores type of guy, mainly just because I think it leaves a bad taste in your mouth of how things ended with him and Tua in Miami.
Great
Do
point.
you want a guy to come in with a young already, and I'm gonna say this lightly, we love Caleb Williams on this channel. We love what he's done so far, the prospect in Caleb Williams, but already coming into the league, somewhat of a controversial, quote unquote, soft West Coast quarterback in Caleb Williams. Do you want Flores to be in there with that guy? Is that going to be the best for Caleb Williams' growth and development? I definitely don't think so. So that's my opinion on why I think Brian Flores probably not the guy I would go with if I'm the Bears. But there's some other ones, as I said. Vrabel, a really good one. To me, the most intriguing one is definitely, I'm going to be that guy, Nick. I'm going to say Ben Johnson. Love the idea of Ben Johnson coming in here, and there's a couple of reasons why. One, you look at the Bears' defense this year. It's already ranked 8th per PFF in defenses. They have a lot of great pieces on the defense. The defense seems like it's running relatively smooth, all things considered for the Bears. Offense, on the other hand, they do have pieces on offense, but 26 ranked offense in the NFL, not a lot. So I think they have the pieces on offense. They're just not getting the performance on offense. I think they have the pieces on defense, but they are getting the performance. So I think a guy to unlock the offense, to me, in my opinion, is very, very prevalent. And I think you go back to last season, Ben Johnson really, there's a mutual interest in the Bears and Ben Johnson. Albert Breer talks about this on his talk show, talking about how Ben Johnson was really looking to go towards the Chicago Bears, but they didn't ever end up getting rid of Eberflus, so it never worked out. He then indicates this year that he still is interested in the Chicago Bears, but on the other side of things, the one thing he wants, and I think this is a sticking point here for the Bears, is he wants to work with a GM that they can go hand in hand with going for in the future, and not one that has any sort of, possibility of getting let go, fired, moved on from. So as I think Ryan Poles has done a great job, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty there with the Bears organization and Poles. They say Warren came out and said Poles is going to be the guy going forward, making decisions on who the next head coach is. But I think they need to be a little bit more reassuring as far as if they want a guy like Johnson to be like, Poles will be the guy going forward. He's going to be here for a while, maybe even give him a little bit of a contract extension, something along those lines to really showcase that, hey, we're going to stick with Poles, and whoever comes in as our head coach is going to have a GM they can work hand in hand with going forward.